I want you to picture a movie script. The opening scene is gritty, it's gray, and it's cold. We're in a working class suburb of Dublin. It's maybe 2007.
Okay.
The camera follows a young guy, barely out of his teens, waking up at 5 a.m. in the pitch black. He drags himself out of bed, puts on these heavy work boots, and heads out to a building site. He's a plumber's apprentice.
Right. So a trade, a real job.
A real job. He spends his days fixing pipes, freezing his hands off, getting yelled at by foremen, and you can just tell he absolutely hates it. And then one day he just stops. He looks at this reliable, sensible life his parents want for him, a trade, a steady paycheck, a pension, and he just walks away.
It sounds like the classic refusal of the call from the hero's journey, or maybe the refusal of the ordinary world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He quits his job to chase a dream that, to everyone in his neighborhood, you have to imagine it looked completely delusional. He decides he's going to be a professional fighter.
And not just a fighter.
No, not just a fighter. He tells everyone who will listen with this absolute conviction that he is going to be the king.
And the incredible thing is that for a solid decade, reality actually bent to his will. It's bizarre.
It did. It played out exactly like the first act of a blockbuster movie. He goes from walking into the post office to collect social welfare checks. I mean, literally living on the dole.
It's almost unbelievable, that detail.
To selling out Madison Square Garden. He becomes the first fighter in UFC history to hold 2 championship belts at the same time. He fights the greatest boxer of his generation and pockets something like $100 million in a single night. It is the ultimate rags to riches story.
But here's the thing about movies based on real life. They don't always end when the credits roll on the triumph. If this whole story is a movie, it shifted genres. It started as Rocky,
Yeah.
turned into The Wolf of Wall Street, and then somewhere along the line, it just began to look like a tragedy.
That is exactly what we are here to unpack today. We are doing a deep dive into the life, the career, and the incredibly turbulent fall of Conor the Notorious McGregor. And frankly, looking at where we are right now in January 2026, the picture is just so complicated.
It really is.
We have a figure who is arguably the most famous Irishman of the 21st century, but who has also become, well, a pariah in many circles.
It is a study in extreme dichotomy. On one side, you have the athlete who completely revolutionized the economics of mixed martial arts. I mean,
Well-
he didn't just play the game, he changed how the game was sold.
For sure.
And then on the other side, you have a man plagued by legal issues, assault convictions, and a very, very serious civil rape verdict that came down in late 2024, not to mention a disastrous attempt to enter politics just last year.
So the mission for this deep dive is to connect those dots. How did we get from the plumber in Crumlin to the champ? And then how did we get from there to the man who was throwing dollies at buses and getting suspended for drug testing failures?
And we should probably establish the context right now. As we're speaking, McGregor is serving an 18-month suspension. He's actually eligible to return to the cage in March 2026, so just a couple of months from now. But the baggage he's carrying into this potential return is heavier than it has ever been. I mean, it's a mountain of baggage.
Okay, let's rewind then. Let's go all the way back to the beginning. Before the yachts, before the Lamborghinis. We're in Crumlin, Dublin, born in 1988. Parents Tony and Margaret.
Right, and Tony's a Liverpool man originally, actually. It's a very working-class upbringing. And like a lot of fighters' stories, McGregor's starts with self-defense. He wasn't looking for glory initially. He was just looking for a bit of safety.
So it wasn't about being a champion from day one.
No, not at all. He took up boxing at 12 years old at the Crumlin Boxing Club because he was dealing with bullies. He just wanted some confidence.
Which is fascinating because confidence is practically his middle name now. But back then, he was just a kid trying to not get pushed around. The family moves to Lucan when he's about 13, and that's where the real world starts to intrude.
Right, his parents want him to have a trade, a skill.
So the plumbing apprenticeship begins.
And this is such a pivotal moment. He did it for about a year. But he described it as just miserable. Long hours, zero interest, the damp, the cold. And this is where you see that first spark of, I don't know, unmitigated ambition? Or maybe just stubbornness.
I think it's a bit of both.
He quit. Against his parents' hesitation, his father was reportedly furious about it. He quit to pursue MMA full-time. He met Tom Egan, who would also become a UFC fighter, and eventually found his way to John Kavanagh at SBG Ireland's Straight Blast gym.
And Kavanagh is such a huge part of the story. He's the Yoda to McGregor's Luke Skywalker, you know?
He really is. But it wasn't a straight shot to stardom, not by any means. There's this detail I always love. Right before his UFC debut in 2013, McGregor was collecting social welfare.
The dole checks.
The rags to riches narrative is very, very real here. He had something like 188 euros to his name. But he wasn't a total novice. He'd had success in Europe first, fighting for a promotion called Cage Warriors.
And this is really important, isn't it, what he did there?
It's the blueprint. In Cage Warriors, he won the featherweight title, and then he moved up and won the lightweight title. He held them simultaneously. He had already done in the minor leagues exactly what he promised everyone he would do in the major leagues.
So 2013 rolls around. Dana White, the UFC president, he visits Dublin to get an award from Trinity College. And apparently he gets flooded with people telling him, you have to sign this McGregor kid.
Everyone's talking about him.
He meets him, talks to him, and boom, he gets a contract.
And the debut happens in April 2013 against Marcus Brimage.
60 G's, baby?
Exactly. He knocks Brimage out in the first round.
Uh,
It wasn't just a win, it was a demolition. He grabs the microphone and screams for the knockout of the night bonus. That one moment just encapsulated everything.
It did. The skill was obviously there.
The technical skill was there. He has that southpaw stance, the constant pressure, and that incredible pullback left hand, which is just his most dangerous weapon.
Okay, wait, can you explain that pullback for people who, maybe aren't fight nerds? What does that actually mean?
Sure, yeah. McGregor fights southpaw. So that means his right hand is forward and his power hand, the left, is in the back. Most people fight orthodox with their left forward.
Right, so it creates a different kind of angle.
It creates what's called an open stance, where both fighters are a bit more vulnerable. And what McGregor had was this almost supernatural ability to judge distance. Yeah. He would lean his head forward, baiting you, daring you to take a swing at him.
He's setting a trap.
He's setting a trap. And when you did swing, he would lean his head back just enough to make you miss by an inch, and while you were overextended from your punch, he would fire that left hand straight down the pipe. It was like a piston.
So he wasn't just brawling, he was sniping. He was a counter-striker.
The precision counter-striker, and he just tore through the division. He won fight after fight. But the psychological aspect was just as heavy as the physical one. Yeah. He would trash-talk opponents until they were angry, they were emotional, and they started making mistakes.
He weaponized language.
He absolutely did. People compared him to Muhammad Ali, though he did, to his credit, respectfully say Ali was special and sort of rejected the direct comparison. But the method was similar. Break them mentally before the bell even rings.
Make them fight your fight.
Make them fight on emotion while he fought on cold, hard calculation.
Which brings us to the peak, the absolute zenith of the Notorious era, 2015 and 2016.
The José Aldo fight at UFC 194. December 2015.
This still blows my mind every time I think about it. José Aldo hadn't lost a fight in 10 years. He was the undisputed king of the featherweights. And McGregor spends months just tormenting him on a world tour.
Oh, it was brutal.
They go to Rio, Aldo's home turf. They go to Dublin. McGregor is snatching his belt at press conferences. He's speaking Portuguese just to taunt him. He's inside his head.
The UFC spent more money promoting that fight than any in its history up to that point. The tension was just unbearable. Aldo is arguably the greatest pound-for-pound fighter on the planet. And then the fight starts.
And 13 seconds later, it's over.
One punch, it's all it took. Aldo, who was usually so patient and calculated, he lunged in. He was emotional. McGregor hit that slip left hook while moving backward. It was perfect.
Fastest finish in UFC title fight history?
He didn't just beat the unbeatable champion, he evaporated him. That was the moment Conor McGregor went from being a UFC star to a global superstar. It wasn't just sports anymore. It felt like magic.
But then we get the first stumble, which I think paradoxically actually made him bigger. The Nate Diaz rivalry.
Yes, March 2016. McGregor is supposed to fight for the lightweight belt, but his opponent, Rafael dos Anjos, pulls out with a broken foot.
Right, short notice.
Very short notice. Nate Diaz steps in. But Diaz says he can't make the lightweight limit, so the fight is at welterweight, 170 pounds.
And that's a huge jump for McGregor.
It's a massive jump. He had just fought at 145 pounds against Aldo. He's moving up 2 weight classes.
And he loses. He hits Diaz with everything he has in that first round, but Diaz is like a zombie. He just keeps coming forward, bleeding, talking trash.
And Conor gasses out. He gets tired. Diaz rocks him on the feet and then chokes him out on the ground in the second round.
He taps out.
He does. And afterward, he gave that famous quote, "I was inefficient with my energy." But instead of hiding or going back down in weight where it was safe, he became completely obsessed. He demanded an immediate rematch.
At the same weight?
At the exact same weight. He had to correct the error. He couldn't let it stand.
Which happened at UFC 202. And that fight, I mean, it was a war.
It was 5 rounds of pure attrition, just back and forth. McGregor knocks him down a few times early. Diaz comes back strong late. McGregor wins a very close majority decision.
But look at the business side of it. Those 2 Diaz fights broke pay-per-view records. 1.3 million buys for the first one, 1.6 million for the rematch. He proved he could lose and still be the biggest draw in the entire sport.
Bigger than ever, in fact.
And that set the stage for UFC 205. New York City, Madison Square Garden, November 2016.
This was historic. The UFC had fought for years, for decades, to get MMA legalized in New York. And McGregor headlines the very first card at the world's most famous arena. He's fighting Eddie Alvarez for the lightweight title.
And this is widely considered his masterpiece performance, isn't it?
It's his masterclass. He dropped Alvarez multiple times. It wasn't even close. He looked like he was in the Matrix, just untouchable. He won via TKO in the second round.
And there he was, sitting on top of the cage, one belt on one shoulder, one belt on the other. The first simultaneous 2-division champion in UFC history. The champs. He'd climbed the mountain. He did exactly what he said he was going to do from the plumbing site to that moment. But this is where the story shifts gears. Because once you've conquered the UFC, where do you go next?
You go where the money is. And that led directly to the money fight in 2017 against Floyd Mayweather.
This was, I mean, it was a circus, but it was a glorious circus. You have an MMA fighter with a professional boxing record of 0-0 challenging Floyd Mayweather, who is 49-0 and arguably the greatest defensive boxer of all time.
From a pure sporting perspective, it was audacious, bordering on ridiculous. It's like a world-class tennis player challenging a world-class ping pong champion to a match of ping pong.
That's a great analogy.
But from an economic perspective, it was absolute genius. It generated 4.3 million pay-per-view buys in the U.S. alone, the second highest of all time, only behind Mayweather-Pacquiao.
And the payout, I still can't wrap my head around it. McGregor was guaranteed $30 million, but reports say he walked away with something like $130 million when you factor in everything else.
And Mayweather made about $280 million. It's just monopoly money at that point.
Yeah.
And in the ring, McGregor actually exceeded expectations.
He did. He won the first few rounds on some scorecards.
He landed clean shots early on before Mayweather, being the master that he is, adjusted, tired him out, and TKO'd him in the 10th round. But McGregor didn't lose stock. He gained generational wealth. He secured the bag.
And that wealth allowed him to build the empire. This is where he pivots from being an athlete to being a full-blown mogul. And we have to talk about the whiskey. 12.
Launched in 2018, named after his Dublin postal code, Dublin 12.
And it just flew off the shelves. People were buying it just because it was his. It wasn't about the taste, which, let's say it got mixed reviews. It was about the brand.
It was marketing power at its absolute finest. He forced the UFC to put the logo on the canvas during his fights. He was drinking it at press conferences. He made it part of his identity.
But there's a sour note here, too, isn't there? The lawsuit.
Yeah, his teammate and friend, Artem Lobov,
Yeah.
the guy who was central to so many of McGregor's beefs and rivalries, later sued McGregor. Lobov claimed the whole whiskey brand was his idea, that he did the initial research, and he wanted 5% of the proceeds.
And what happened with that? Lobov lost the injunction, right?
He did. The court sided with McGregor, and then McGregor went on to sell the majority stake to Proximo Spirits in 2021 for a deal that was worth up to $600 million.
$600 million.
It's a staggering business success. He essentially printed money with that brand.
He also started buying pubs in Dublin, the Black Forge Inn in his home area of Crumlin, which he renovated into this high-end gastropub, and also the Marble Arch.
And the Marble Arch purchase is, well, it's telling, isn't it? That was the very pub where, in 2019, McGregor assaulted an older man who refused a free shot of his whiskey.
So he bought the pub where he committed the assault.
It feels like a power move, just asserting dominance over the scene of a crime. It's like saying, you wouldn't drink my whiskey, now I own the chair you're sitting on. It's very strange.
And we'll get into the legal stuff more deeply in a bit, but it's worth noting that the Black Forge Inn was also the site of a fire in July 2025.
Yes, a fire that was treated as suspicious by the Gardaí, the Irish police. No casualties, thankfully, but it shows that his presence in Dublin started bringing chaos, not just business. Molotov cocktails were reportedly found at the scene.
Oh.
He suggests that while he was incredibly rich, he wasn't exactly popular in his own hometown anymore.
He also got into fashion with a brand called August McGregor and recently became a part owner of BKFC, the Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship.
And of course, Hollywood came calling. He was in the Roadhouse remake with Jake Gyllenhaal in 2024.
Playing a villain, which is
Essentially playing a version of himself. But while the bank account was exploding, the fighting career, the very thing that built all of this, had started to rot.
And that brings us to Section 3, the sporting decline. After the Mayweather fight, he takes a long break from MMA. But when he comes back to the UFC in 2018, the landscape has completely changed. There's a new king in town, Khabib Nurmagomedov.
And this rivalry was toxic. It
Yeah.
went so far beyond normal trash talk. It got into religion, nationality, family. And you can't talk about this fight without first talking about the bus attack in Brooklyn in April 2018.
Right. McGregor and his crew, they fly to New York, storm the Barclays Center during a media day, and McGregor throws a metal dolly through the window of a bus carrying fighters because he was looking for Khabib.
People were injured. Michael Chiesa and Ray Borg had to be pulled from their fights because they got shards of glass in their eyes. Rose Namajunas, another champion, was reportedly traumatized by the whole thing.
This wasn't promotion, this was criminal behavior.
Yeah, it was. He pled no contest to disorderly conduct. But the UFC, in a very controversial move, used that exact footage to promote the fight at UFC 229. It became the Eagle versus the Notorious, the biggest fight in UFC history.
And the fight itself.
It was a mauling, plain and simple.
Yeah.
Khabib dominated him. He dropped McGregor with a punch, which surprised everyone because Khabib is known as a wrestler, and then he submitted him with a neck crank in the 4th round.
He looked
Mortal. He looked like a guy who hadn't fought in a real MMA cage for 2 years and had spent that time on yachts, not in the gym.
And then the post-fight brawl happened.
Complete chaos.
Yeah.
Khabib jumped the cage to go after McGregor's corner. McGregor was inside the cage fighting Khabib's teammates. It was an absolute stain on the sport. Both of them got suspended.
That really felt like the turning point, didn't it? The aura of invincibility was just gone.
Completely shattered. He did return in 2020 to fight Donald Cowboy Cerrone. He looked great, knocked him out in 40 seconds with these unusual shoulder strikes and a head kick.
He became the first fighter to have KO wins in 3 different divisions, right? Featherweight, lightweight, and welterweight.
He did. It was an impressive record. But Cerrone was at the very end of his career. It was, in hindsight, a bit of a false dawn.
Because then came the Dustin Poirier trilogy in 2021.
Right. And Poirier was a guy McGregor had beaten very easily back in 2014 on his way up. But the 2021 version of Dustin Poirier was a whole different animal.
What happened in that second fight?
In January 2021, Poirier utilized these brutal calf kicks to completely immobilize McGregor's lead leg. And then, once McGregor was a stationary target, he knocked him out in the 2nd round. It was the first time McGregor had ever been knocked out cold in his MMA career.
That image of him just sitting against the fence looking bewildered, it was jarring to see. And then the third fight, July 2021.
The leg break. In the 1st round, McGregor stepped back on his own leg, and his lower tibia just snapped. The bone broke. The fight was stopped.
A TKO via doctor stoppage.
Yes. But even then, while he was sitting on the canvas with a broken leg, he was screaming threats at Poirier and his wife. It was just ugly. There was no grace in it.
And he hasn't fought since. That was in mid-2021. We are now in January 2026.
Well, he tried to. He coached the Ultimate Fighter television show against Michael Chandler in 2023. They were scheduled to fight in June 2024 at UFC 303. But then, just a couple of weeks before the fight,
McGregor pulled out with a broken toe.
a broken toe
Yeah.
after years away. And then a few months later came the official suspension, October 7th, 2025.
And what was that for exactly?
He failed to disclose his whereabouts for drug testing 3 times in 2024. It's a clear violation of the anti-doping policy. The rules are clear. You have to let them know where you are at all times so they can show up and test you randomly. He didn't.
And the punishment.
An 18-month suspension, retroactive to the time of the 3rd failure. So he's sitting on the sidelines until March 2026.
So we have a completely stalled career. But while the fighting stopped, the trouble didn't. In fact, you could argue the trouble accelerated. And we really need to go into the dark side of this story, the legal battles.
It's a very clear pattern of behavior, and it's been escalating for years. We've mentioned the driving offenses, multiple speeding fines, disqualifications. In July 2024, he got a 5-month suspended sentence and a 2-year driving ban for dangerous driving.
This was in his Bentley, right?
Yeah, driving at high speeds, weaving in and out of traffic on the motorway.
Just reckless. And the aggression isn't just behind the wheel. Remember that incident at Bellator 187 in 2017?
Oh, yeah, he wasn't even fighting. He jumped the cage to celebrate with a teammate, got into it with the referee, Mark Goddard, pushed him, and then slapped the commissioner who was trying to get him out of there.
Then the bus attack we already covered. Then the pub punching an older man in the head because he wouldn't drink the free whiskey.
He pled guilty to that assault, was fined €1,000, which, seems trivial in terms of the punishment for a man that wealthy, but the PR damage was massive. It made him look like a common bully.
And then there was the bizarre incident with the Miami Heat mascot in 2023.
I still can't believe that happened. It was supposed to be a pre-planned skit during a timeout to promote a pain relief spray he was endorsing.
And what, he just took it too far?
He punched the mascot, who was a real person in a suit, so hard that the man had to go to the ER. It's like he doesn't have an off switch. Everything has to be dialed up to 11.
It sounds almost like slapstick comedy until you realize real people are getting hurt. But those incidents, they really pale in comparison to the sexual assault allegations. And we need to be very precise here, just sticking to the facts as they were presented in court and credible reports.
Yes. This is the gravest part of his entire recent history. There have been multiple allegations over the years, an incident in Corsica, another in Ibiza, which didn't lead to criminal convictions. A woman jumped from his yacht in one case.
But the case that truly changed everything was the Nikita Hand case.
That's right. This was a civil trial in Dublin in late 2024.
Tell us about it.
Nikita Hand alleged that McGregor had raped her in a Dublin hotel room back in December 2018. A civil jury heard all the evidence in November 2024, and their verdict was that they found, on the balance of probabilities, that McGregor had assaulted and raped her.
So just to be clear for everyone listening, that is a civil verdict, which has a different legal standard. It's based on the balance of probabilities rather than the criminal standard of beyond a reasonable doubt.
That is the crucial legal distinction, yes. But the public and commercial impact was absolutely seismic. The jury ordered him to pay about €248,000 in damages to Miss Hand.
And that wasn't all, was it?
No. Later, the judge ordered him to pay her legal costs, which were estimated to be around $1.5 million. McGregor, of course, appealed. But he lost those appeals in July and December of 2025. The Supreme Court refused to even hear a further appeal. The verdict stands.
And during that trial, some very damaging details came out about his lifestyle.
Very damaging. McGregor admitted to cocaine use during the trial, and the commercial fallout was immediate and devastating. This wasn't like the bus attack where sponsors kind of stayed quiet because bad publicity is still publicity. This was radio silence.
So who dropped him? Who walked away?
Almost everyone. IO Interactive, the video game company, removed him as a downloadable target from their Hitman game. Major supermarket chains in Ireland, Tesco, SuperValu delisted his alcohol brands. The pub chain Wetherspoons stopped selling his forged Irish stout.
And what about the whiskey, the brand he built?
This is perhaps the most personal blow. Proximo Spirits, the company that paid him hundreds of millions for Proper No. 12, announced they would no longer be using his name or his image in association with the brand.
Wow. So the brand that he built that literally carries his neighborhood's postal code basically erased him from their own product.
That's the reality. The brand had become toxic. They made a business calculation that they could sell the whiskey better without Conor McGregor's face on it.
And there was another case in Miami too, right? During the NBA Finals in 2023.
Yes. An allegation of sexual assault in a men's bathroom during a game. The criminal case was eventually dropped due to insufficient evidence and some witness issues, but a new civil suit was filed against him in January of 2025. So the legal battles are not over.
And speaking of his behavior, we can't ignore the bizarre social media stuff. The online exchange with the musician Azalea Banks involving photos.
Mutual unsolicited photos, according to the reports at the time. It just paints a picture of a chaotic, unmoored, and frankly quite sordid lifestyle. He seems to be a man without any guardrails at all.
So you have the situation, his reputation is in tatters, his fighting career is on hold, his business partners are fleeing. What does Conor McGregor do? He pivots to politics.
And this might be the most surreal chapter of the entire story. In late 2023, after a very serious stabbing incident in Dublin sparked riots, McGregor took to X, which was formerly Twitter.
And what did he say?
He tweeted, "Ireland is at war." He started posting very strong, very inflammatory anti-immigration sentiments.
And he was actually investigated for incitement to hatred for that, wasn't he?
He was, although it was announced in March 2025 that no charges would ultimately be filed. But he leaned into it. He seemed to find a new audience, or at least he thought he did. And he announced he wanted to run for president of Ireland in the 2025 election.
President McGregor. It sounded like a skit from Saturday Night Live. What was his platform? What was he running on?
It was described by political commentators as national populist, and in some cases, far right. He focused almost entirely on anti-immigration rhetoric. He positioned himself as the strong man, the defender of the true Irish. But this is where the notorious echo chamber of social media met the hard reality of public opinion. The polls.
How did he do?
Terribly. He consistently polled around 7% or 8%. And crucially, something like 89% or 90% of respondents in those polls said they would not vote for him under any circumstances. He had high name recognition, of course, but incredibly high negative ratings.
He launched a petition at one point too, right?
Yes. In August of 2025, he tried to challenge the nomination rules because he couldn't get the support from local councils or members of the Oireachtas, the Irish Parliament, that you need to get on the ballot.
And eventually,
He withdrew from the race in September 2025, but not before a very high-profile and very strange moment involving Donald Trump.
the White House visit,
Mm.
March 2025.
St. Patrick's Day. McGregor was invited to the White House by Trump. It was a bizarre scene. McGregor stood there and claimed Ireland was losing its Irishness because of illegal immigration, essentially using the platform of the White House to attack the current Irish government.
How did that go down back home in Ireland?
Very, very poorly. The Taoiseach, the Irish Prime Minister, and other leading politicians condemned it. They called his comments appalling, embarrassing, and not representative of Ireland.
And the irony of that meeting wasn't lost on people?
No. Critics immediately pointed out the bitter irony of the visual. Donald Trump and Conor McGregor, two men who had both been found liable for sexual assault or abuse in civil courts, shaking hands at the White House on St. Patrick's Day.
It really feels like he burned the bridge to his home country. He went from being the hero wrapped in the tricolor flag at his weigh-ins to being publicly condemned by the country's leaders.
It's the ultimate alienation. He positioned himself as someone who could lead the country, but the country essentially told him, we don't know you anymore. You don't speak for us.
So here we are. It's January 2026. Let's try and synthesize all of this. We have a man who, without a doubt, changed MMA forever. He secured the bag, he created the champ status, but he also leaves this trail of destruction in his wake.
If you look at the whole trajectory, McGregor is the blueprint for the modern influencer fighter. He showed that attention, good or bad, monetizes. He taught a generation of fighters that being loud is often more profitable than being good.
He's also a warning.
He's also a massive warning label. At the end of the day, his greatest opponent wasn't Khabib or Poirier or Mayweather. It was his own inability to handle the life he built. He had no off switch. The aggression that made him rich inside the cage made him a liability outside of it.
And the drug suspension is up in March, just 2 months away. So the big question, will he fight again?
He's eligible. But does he need the money? Probably not. Although legal bills are certainly expensive, does he need the glory? Probably. But the bigger question is, does the UFC need him? For a long time, the answer to that was yes, at any cost.
But now,
With the sponsors dropping him, with the civil rape verdict permanently attached to his name, he might be too toxic for even them to touch.
it's a heavy question. Can a legacy that was built on being the Notorious survive when the notoriety shifts from being a rebellious antihero to a pariah in his own country and the business world? Or has the brand finally become too toxic to touch?
That is the question, and I think we are watching the answer play out in real time. The brand might finally be broken beyond repair.
A fascinating, if tragic, deep dive today. From the plumbing site in Lucan to the heights of Madison Square Garden and down into the courtrooms of Dublin, that is the story of Conor McGregor. Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive.
Thank you.